All right. Good afternoon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy CIZZY live action back at it again with another episode of the Voices of Value podcast. And we've been a little inconsistent lately. We used to be on the weekly basis until I moved to LA, and then I moved to LA, and now it's been a little sparse. So hopefully the sparseness brings on better guests because it gives me more time to reflect on the dope individuals I want to bring on. And today it brings to us a special gentleman who's doing a lot of cool stuff in the health and wellness arena, has done a lot of cool stuff in the health and wellness arena, and continues to do so. So we'll be talking about his journey there and entrepreneurship and some of the lessons he's learned, challenges and obstacles he's overcame. And y'all know the vibes in general. We'll just be chatting it up. So with that being said, my guy, welcome to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Miguel Johns. I am an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, in the health and wellness space. I've been doing health technology for almost 10 years now, since college. Before that, I was a Division One athlete, played football my whole life, ran track my whole life. So what I found is the transition from sports athlete to entrepreneurship was actually it just made sense. It all the same type of things that I learned through my sports career translated over into the entrepreneurship realm, and so I haven't looked back since.
Hell yeah, and let's start with the early beginnings. If my research is correct, were you actually born in Germany? And if so, can we start with that story there, and then how you made the transition with your family to Kansas, and we'll work our way up from there.
Yeah, definitely. So it actually sounds way cooler than it actually is. My dad was in the army, so he's based in Ansbach, Germany. And so I was born in Germany. I don't remember any of it. My earliest memories are from being here in Kansas. My mom is from Kansas. My dad's actually from LA. And so he grew up in LA, had a completely different childhood than me. His dad passed away at a young age from heart disease, actually, which is part of my motivation. And his mom moved him to Kansas because she thought, where on earth can this man stay out of trouble? Maybe Kansas. And so that's how him and my mom met. And I was born in Germany, but I was truly raised here in the States.
I love it. I love it. And talk to me a little bit about the town you grew up in. So, when people hear Kansas, immediately they think farm town, immediately, essentially, they don't associate it with cities. And although I am
Yeah.
from Missouri and I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, anytime I tell people here in LA, oh, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, they're like, oh, you're from Kansas. I'm like, no, I'm from Missouri, but yeah, pretty much same thing. And they're like, oh, so like farms and cows. And I'm like, I mean, they're close by, but I grew up in the city. So I mean, just like you grew up
Uh,
in the city, I grew up in the city. So share with me a little bit about your personal Kansas experience. Was it more city-esque? Did you feel like you were in a small big town, or did you feel like, okay, I'm in the boonies?
Yeah, yeah, great. It's a good question. I grew up in Newton, Kansas, which in Kansas, I mean, you're right from Kansas City, Missouri, so I'm sure you're familiar. There's Kansas City, there's Wichita. Kansas City is like the true city. Wichita is a big town, probably 300, 400,000 people, and they're trying to become a city. And then there's a bunch of towns with anywhere from 20 to 30,000 people, maybe 15 to 30,000 people. That's what Newton is. Newton falls into that category. So growing up, I was in a town that when we looked at the boonies, like a Heston or a Halstead or a Sedgwick, we looked at them like, oh, that's the farm town. That's the 5,000 people, 1,000 people type deal. We were kind of in the middle. We looked at the Wichitas and the Kansas Cities like, oh man, that's a whole different ball game. But at least we're not as small as these guys over here who only are herding cattle. I did have a lot of friends who had farms and cows and chickens and all that good stuff, and I lived probably 2 blocks away from cornfields. So I did have that true Kansas small town feel. Everybody knew everybody. You grew up with all the same people from kindergarten through high school. And looking back, I do appreciate that. I enjoyed it. It wasn't as small as like the 5 to 10 person classroom, but it was small enough to feel comforting and connected as a community.
I love that. And with that being said, like how was the sports community there? With it being like a small big town, I'm sure there was like a mix of okay, sports are really important because, this is our way of, meeting new friends, going to see new schools, going to different parts of town. Like, so I'm sure a lot of kids were involved with that. Parents are busy working two, three jobs, trying to trying to keep
Yep.
things afloat. So they're like, how do I keep my kids busy? So talk to me a little bit about your sports upbringing. Was it, a lot of your life even when you were a kid, or did you just get into it in, middle school or high school? You did end up playing at the collegiate level, so obviously it was of somewhat importance to you. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Mhm. Yeah, sports was everything. And my parents told me and my siblings at a young age, this is how you get out of here, right? Like we want you to have much larger dreams than Newton, Kansas. And sports was a path for us to do that. And what's funny about Newton is although it's a small town people probably have never heard of, we had quite a bit of really good athletes. We just had the national collegiate wrestler Wyatt came out of Newton, Kansas, and just beat Gabriel Stevens on the national stage. My brother is in the UFC as another professional athlete. There was multiple guys who were a little bit older than me who played Division I football and track. And so for being a small town, we had some really good athletes, and it was something that bonded me and my friends that I grew up with from a young age. We did not have a lot of money growing up, and so anytime we traveled for sports, it felt like our vacation. That was our family trip, was okay, we got a track meet in St. Louis, Missouri, and that would feel like a vacation for us. And so that laid the foundation for my whole life, really. And I like to consider myself an athlete playing intramural and pickup and stuff like that. But it was everything. Sports was everything. We played year round. We did summer tournaments after school. That's how we hung out with our friends. On the weekends, that's how we hung out with our friends. It pretty much drove my life and a lot of the people that I grew up with there as well.
I love it. I think the funny thing, when I was looking at some of your sports career that I think about is when we think Hutchinson Community College, it's pretty much the only community college in the Midwest outside of there was some big school in like junior college in Iowa. I wouldn't call
Mhm.
it big, but a popular place for people to go if they were going to go community college then to a bigger school.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling to remember what the name of it. Wasn't
Iowa
there a school?
Central.
Yeah, isn't were they the one
Yeah.
that was like winning a lot of like they
Yeah,
were
they
like
are
very
very good.
competitive, yeah, and
They
set a
are
lot
very
of people up.
good.
Yeah, so it was Hutchinson and Iowa Central that like kids were like once it everyone was going D1 all the way up until senior year when they started to, like it hit them in the head that first off, unfortunately, a lot of them weren't talented enough to go Division One, and then number two, the grades just weren't hitting for a lot of these kids, and they
Mhm.
just weren't prepared for that. So it's just funny where people would be like, "Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna go to Hutchinson or Iowa Central and spend a little bit of time there." And honestly, I think those experiences for students are really important, and the people who take it serious turn those junior colleges into an amazing opportunity. And it seems like you were able to do that. So, talk to me about your decision to go to Hutchinson. What was that experience like for you? Was it challenging? I know a lot of kids that went to junior college to play football, and they talked about it being like the most challenging part of their life. It wasn't the greatest campus, it wasn't the greatest, it's
Yeah.
always in a small town, there was nothing to do, the coaches were running them into the ground. They were trying to compete with so many other guys who were coming down from Division 1 to try to get
Yeah.
re-recruited to other places. So talk to me a little bit about your experience at Hutchinson and how your headspace going in and then your headspace coming out of there.
Yeah, definitely. So, man, this is good. I usually don't get asked about this type of stuff. I actually originally went to Emporia State, which was a D2. I went there to play football, run track. My redshirt freshman year at Emporia State, I was partying a little too much and actually got in trouble. And so that took me to Hutchinson Community College. Now, what's funny about that story at the time, it was the end of the world, right? Like my whole world was falling apart. I didn't see anything. I couldn't see into a better future for myself. I had an amazing roommate named Andrew Etheridge, who growing up was a top athlete in the country, and he ended up winning nationals as a freshman at Emporia State. And the reason it's kind of a side tangent, the reason he chose Emporia State is so he also could play two sports, football and track. But he was a D1 level track athlete, and he really inspired me. I developed a chip on my shoulder for one of the first times in my life where I was like, you know what? I'm going to work extremely hard. I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to propel myself beyond this D2 level. Because growing up, I also thought I was D1 material and actually got recruited by a few D1s straight out of high school. Offers didn't come through. took the offer from Emporia State, went up there, ended up going to Hutch and had this huge chip on my shoulder, which was it didn't work out at Emporia State. People are doubting me. Everybody says I've thrown my opportunities away, and I'm going to use this moment to take myself to the next level. And one of the things you mentioned, athletics in Newton. I loved Newton for the small community, but that was also a hindrance, and it was a hindrance because of how people thought. So not a lot of people thought really big. Not a lot of people thought, you know what, I'm going to go out and change the world. It was far more get a good job, be comfortable, take the safe route. Here's the best path where you're going to experience the less obstacles and the least disappointment. And so even telling people I wanted to play D1 sports, that you could see a hesitation like, well, that's a tough task. Like maybe you won't get disappointed if you go the safe route. And when I got to Hutch, we had, I think, 6 NFL guys on my team that year. It was like Cordell Patterson, Marcus Golden. There were multiple guys who from that team ended up going to the NFL. And that was the first time I experienced that level of talent. And so someone like Cordell Patterson, who was the number one recruit in the country, he had coaches from Alabama and Tennessee and Georgia come into our practices on a Tuesday. It was nuts. And he was one of many. I think we had 21 D1 athletes that year that I was at Hutch. That opened my mind. It allowed me to see what the best in the world looked like. And today, Cordell Patterson owns the NFL record for most kick returns for a touchdown. So he beat Devin Hester's record, which is nuts. But that allowed me to see this is what the top tier athletes look like. This is how they move. This is how they act. This is what their mindset is like. And that transformed me as an athlete. And so I went from Newton, Kansas, pretty good in a small town to competing with some of these guys and be playing a major role on that team and breaking records at Hutch and then getting in a full ride scholarship to Indiana State, which is a Division I school. And that only happened because of what I call like exposure and being around these top level athletes and just seeing and becoming familiar with it and understanding it just opened my mind. And so I had a massive chip on my shoulder going into it. I worked extremely hard while I was there, but it was the toughest part of my life up to this point. I'm sure life has many other things for me over time, but up to this point, that was an extremely tough part of my life. Leaving Emporia State, going into this new environment, which is a hostile environment, right? Like everybody there is on their last chance, their last leg. They're all competing for a small amount of opportunities, and it's some of the best athletes I've ever seen in the country in some of the worst conditions that you could imagine, from the dorms to just the environment. Now we had an amazing coaching staff who really kept us focused and kept us busy, and we had this idea that we could win a national championship together. So that helped a lot, but it still was a dog eat dog back against the wall experience. And I now, looking back on that, appreciate it greatly because the challenges I face in entrepreneurship, for example, it's like, oh, this is nothing. I've been in a dog pound before, so
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's so interesting how like our what you could call foundation really sets us up for our future. Like the obstacles will continue to come, some, heavier than others, but some of those early experiences, man, they'll set you up. They really just shift your mindset. They're like, oh, okay, this is what it means to be truly uncomfortable. Okay, so then, fucking stubbing my toe is nothing. Like, move on. So,
yep,
so no,
100%.
I love that. So going through that challenging, 2 years and then transitioning into Indiana State, were you like at Indiana State coming in with that same dog eat dog world mindset, or were you like, oh, this shit is light work? I just went through like you said, the dog pound, and now I'm here, and like I'm not necessarily lazy, but the living situation's a little bit better. I'm kind of
Yeah.
established. I know I'm about to be here the next 2 years, 3 years. Where were you at when you entered Indiana State, and how did that kind of guide you on what you were going to study in terms of going into exercise science, and then just a few short years later launching your first business, or what I assume to be your
Yeah.
first business?
Yep. Yep. Oh man, that's I reflect on this more often than people realize. I lost a little bit of that chip on my shoulder when I got the scholarship to Indiana State because I felt like I had made it. Like my whole life, my parents told me if you work hard enough in your sports, you can earn a full ride scholarship to a college. And I did it. Like I was like, this is it. I've actually accomplished it. Now, there were small talks amongst my truly inner circle, which is like my dad, my brothers, my really good friends. It's like, hey, maybe if you try really hard, you might get a shot at an NFL team, right? But that was so much of a yeah, that's a fancy kind of pie in the sky idea. I've accomplished what I need to accomplish, which is get to a school that they're going to pay for my education and jobs not all the way done because we still got to play football, but jobs mostly done. So looking back, I lost a major driver and I don't like to tell people like you need to hold on to anger and want to get revenge and have this chip on your shoulder, but it does help. And so when I got there, I did kind of take my foot off the gas a little bit. I was living like, hey, I'm getting a monthly stipend for just going to school. This is crazy. And I ended up getting injured my junior year. I tore one hamstring. My whole thing was speed. I'm not a very big guy, and I played wide receiver. And so speed was my thing. I tore my hamstring, tried to come back too early, it was compensating and then tore the other one shortly after.
Damn.
And that's really, really sidelined me pretty hard. And so then I got another challenge, my next biggest challenge, which was who are you without football? Right? If you literally cannot play football right now, who are you? And that sent me on a dark night of the soul where I was depressed for a while. I didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up stumbling across this field of study known as exercise science. I didn't even know it existed before I got there. And I got into that. And that aligned with when I asked myself the deeper question, like, who are you really beyond football? And it aligned with me so well because of my family history. So I mentioned my dad's dad, my grandfather on my dad's side, who I never met, passed away from a massive heart attack at a young age. My grandmother on my dad's side of the family passed away from diabetes complications in the worst way you can imagine, spent her last year of life living with us in our house. And my dad had type 2 diabetes. And so I had this fear that I was starting to realize, which was how do I help my dad and make sure he avoids the outcomes that his mom and dad experienced? And that led me into exercise science. And I started learning about the human body and exercise and nutrition and how you can prevent things like type 2 diabetes and heart disease and even reverse them with the right methods and practices. And that really inspired me. That consumed my mind at that point, that I knew I wanted to make an impact in the health world. It seemed like healthcare was a market where there's lots of opportunities. It was ripe for disruption. And if you could even win on a small scale, the rewards for that, the financial incentives for that were significant. So it'd be worth my time to try to take something like that on. So yeah, it was a getting to Indiana State, realizing, you know what, feeling like I've made it. I don't have that big chip on my shoulder anymore. I can take a deep breath. That led to a couple of injuries, which led to new challenges. Who am I? What am I going to do with my life? And I stumbled into exercise science and entrepreneurship shortly after.
I love it. I love it. And I think that begs the question to jump right into the business side of things. What was the name and let's just say value proposition or purpose of your first business? I know you kind of just shared it, and
Mhm.
that purpose kind of aligns with all the things you've done since then. So
Mhm.
feel free to continue to elaborate upon that. But what was your first business, and talk to us a little bit about what that, you know, what your goal was with that business.
Yeah. So I was sitting in one of my classes, I think senior year, we had a course called Chronic Disease Prevention and Management. And it was all about the things I'm talking about, diabetes, obesity, heart disease. How do you prevent them? And if somebody is diagnosed with them and at like a late stage, so if you just had a heart attack and you just had surgery, then how do you get them back exercising after? And I love my professor from that class, Dr. Matthew Feedback. I'll never forget him. He showed us a documentary one day, and it was called Escape Fire. It was all about the US healthcare system and how it's in flames. We're incentivizing the wrong things. People are getting sicker. Providers are spending less time with people. People feel helpless. Insurance isn't covering the right things. It was just a whole mess. And I remember watching that documentary and leaving that class like, I'm going to work on this. this is my life's calling. So I started KingFit at the time in my college apartment. And the goal of KingFit, because there's a couple other things happening as well. Two other things are happening. One was this rise of what's known as digital health. Now, digital health really got its legs when COVID hit. And digital health is a fancy way to say you can see a doctor on your phone or on your computer. And that really wasn't a thing that was popular at the time. And this was 2015, 2014. Digital health was starting to get some legs and starting to gain some traction. And I thought that's interesting. That speaks to me because I grew up with the internet. I'm used to technology. I've been playing with different tools online, so that looks attractive to me. And then the other thing that was happening is IBM Watson had just hit the scene, and it was an AI technology. And well, it was supposed to be an AI technology. So I seen that, and I thought, you know what? If I can use this IBM Watson technology, I can create a digital health product and we can go to market in this healthcare space and help people with diabetes and obesity and people who are at risk for heart disease. And set out on that mission to build this AI coaching platform. And this was now 10 years ago. The problem I ran into with that first company is IBM Watson actually marketed themselves like they were what OpenAI is today. They were not even close. The technology was nowhere near what it needed to be. And so I set out into the world, and here's another one of those obstacles that came around. Hey, we can build this amazing AI coach platform, got people all excited, got people behind us, lined up partnerships. And then when we went to go build it, it just did not work. And so fell flat on my face in that situation, had to make a bunch of pivots just trying to survive. Let's maybe build this, let's maybe build that, let's maybe do this. All of them not even close to the original vision and what we wanted to do. And so it was one painful moment after the next. And eventually I wrapped that company up in around 2020, 2021, just because we had gotten to the end of the line. However, one of the things, and this is something I'm sure everybody can pull from their difficult times in their life, there's always these nuggets and these lessons. And I was fortunate enough to align myself with a major angel investor who's still my angel investor today. That angel investor, he watched me during my King Fit days. And then when I started Moment, which is my company now, the creators of Milton AI, he said, you know what? I've seen you progress. I've seen what you've done. I've seen you grow. Whatever you're doing next, I'm in. And so he came with me and he's funded everything since that point as well. So that was huge. And then I also learned what it means to build technology. The first couple of apps I built at KingFit were terrible, so bad. I got taken advantage of. I remember paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for an app and it just didn't even work. And somebody shipped it overseas and just took all the money. I learned so many lessons around closing deals in the healthcare space, which if you're in the fitness world and you're looking at like employers or healthcare as opportunities, there are amazing opportunities, but you have to understand what it means to close deals in that space. And it is a whole different beast. So I learned all of that. I learned what it meant to build a team that could really take a product to the next level from the technology side to the customer service side to the operation side. So there were all these lessons. I call the King Fit days my entrepreneurial education. That's where I really got my chops through just painful lessons of trying to survive, back against the wall, things not working, having to figure it out, having to make it to the next month. And the one thing that drove me through that was I had this mindset in that I adopted in college, where I believed if I could spend 10 years working on something and really just pushing through the challenges and taking in everything as a lesson, that at the end of that 10 years, I would be good enough at it to where I could have success. And I didn't know what that success would look like, but I believe that it could be financial freedom, time freedom, and doing something that aligns with my passions, which is where I am today. So it did end up paying off, but boy, there was probably 1,000 times I thought about throwing in the towel.
Man, hey, there's so many questions I want to ask you there, but I'll try to simplify the first few questions into one. So, if you were to go on a rant about misconceptions that young, early entrepreneurs have when they're getting into the game, like what would you say? What's something like you're just like, it's almost like you would be like encouraging them to not go into entrepreneurship. I'm not saying you would do that, but like if you were
Yep,
trying
yep.
to hypothetically do that, what would be like one or two things that you would say to like a young bull immediately? They're like, hey, I want to like launch a digital app in let's just keep it simple in healthcare.
Yep.
I
Yep.
want to launch a digital app in the healthcare space. And you're like, okay, well, hear this out first. What are you going to say?
Yep, yep. The first thing, you're exactly right. I would be like, I don't know if you want to do that, man. But then second to that, I'd say, are you ready truly to commit 10 years of your life in which you're going to have to pay your dues and expect nothing from it? If you're, and people, of course, can take that on the surface level and jump to an answer, like, yeah, I'm all in. But you have to really understand what that means. There's going to be so many nights of stress, of worry, of fear, of thinking it's not going to work out. You're going to have to sacrifice keeping up with your peers. That's been a big one is everybody around me progressing through their careers, buying houses, getting their first car, taking a trip, a family trip, whatever, getting the promotion at the job. You're going to have to sacrifice that, which we are very social animals. I thought that was going to be the easy thing. Over time, it becomes a very hard thing because then people are also starting to ask you, like, hey, aren't you still working on that thing? I wonder when it's going to pay off. Or maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. And it's that same concern that I grew up with in Newton, which is like, oh, you sure you want to try to get a scholarship? Maybe just go this route. It's much easier. And so if you can truly, at the core of your being, say, I am willing to put 10 years into this and not look up for the next 10 years, not care about how everybody else is doing, focus on my skills and my crafts and get better at what I'm doing every week, learn something new every week, take one step forward every single week, then you can be successful. But that is the actual hard part. The hard part's not figuring out how to build the technology, figuring out how to get the deals, figuring out how to start the business. The hard part is sticking with it when there's no proof that it's going to work at all. That is the hard part. And most people, I mean, just look at your own circle of friends and family outside of like your like the network you consider the high level folks. Most people can't stick with anything for a week or even a month. Like they start something, they may do it for a couple of days, and like, I'm just it's not going anywhere. So you've got to be willing to stick with something for 5, 10 years. Now, here's the secret in that. As you start going, you will start seeing signs that nobody else sees. You'll start seeing little things. You'll start noticing yourself getting better at stuff. You'll start seeing just these little signs throughout that can keep you going if you follow them. So there's a couple of books I read that helped me a lot with that. One was called Mastery by Robert Greene. And he talks about the three phases of mastery. He talks about this apprenticeship phase, which I fully bought into. That's what I mean by like paying your dues for those first 5, 10 years. You in the olden days, if you were going to become a somebody who made weapons for war, you had to go through years of apprenticeship under this. I think it's called like a blacksmith who's making the actual materials, and he wouldn't even let you touch a sword until you spent years just watching and observing. And then eventually you get your chance to make your first sword. Robert Greene calls that the creative active phase. Now you can actually create stuff, put it out in the world, get some feedback. And then once you've done that long enough, eventually you'll become a master of your craft. But the apprenticeship phase is where most people quit. They don't realize it's a process, it's a learning process, and you're mostly going to be denied through that phase. So if you can adopt that mindset, then you'll be okay. And then the other book I read that I've loved and I'll never forget is The Alchemist. And The Alchemist is a lot of famous people's favorite book, from Oprah to Will Smith and many others. And the punchline of that book are these little signs I'm talking about that nobody else can see, that there's no scoreboard for, there's no monetary reward for, but you notice them if you keep going. And it's telling you along the way, like, okay, just a little bit further, and then you reach a landmark. You're like, okay, I am truly making progress. And then again, you're back in the cave, you're back underground working, trying to figure stuff out, and then you're going through it again. So that's the main message I'd give anybody, whether you want to start a t-shirt store on Main Street in your small town, or you're trying to build the next $1 billion software company. You've got to be willing to put in the time to pay the dues and expect nothing out of it. And if you do that, eventually you will get good enough because you're a human being with a human mind and a human soul and potential, and you can't help but to learn these things. But it's the time without any reward that's the tough part.
Yeah, I totally with you on that. I don't know if this is necessary. I don't know why this popped in my mind, but it's the first thing that popped in my mind. You remember that movie? I can't believe I'm forgetting it right now. It's a legendary movie in the black community with Cameron and fucking who's that other really good black actor? He's in The Wire. Did you see The Wire? Have you watched The Wire?
Yes, yep, yep,
You know the main gangster in the first few seasons,
yep,
the tall black
yep.
dude. I forget his name, but it's him in the movie, Cameron in the movie. You remember what I'm talking about? That movie from like the
Man, I'd have
90s.
to.
It's based in New York, and then damn, and dang, I wish I could remember. But long story short, there's a moment in that where they're like all sitting around the table, like, him, those two characters, and then like one other, and they're like shooting baskets into the trash can with their like takeout food or whatever, like, shooting
Uh,
baskets. And he's like, if I make this, this amount of money, and then then he misses. He's like, I bet you won't make it. He's like, double my money, double my money. And the point I'm trying to make here is like, as an entrepreneur or somebody who's trying to build something that's not like, trying to build something, that's a simple way of saying it,
mhm.
is every time somebody doubts you or every time you doubt yourself, like at the end of that conversation with self in your brain, you got to be like, man, double my money. I'm going in harder. Like, like you're like, essentially that's what it is. It's like 10 years of, like, I could go get a job. Should I go back to college and get this degree so I could just go get a safer job in finance or this? And then, somebody, your parents call you like, are you sure that thing's going to work out for
Yeah,
you? Or like, are you actually making money from that? Like, why don't you just come back home? Blah, blah, blah. Like every single one of those things, even though they mean well, what has to happen in your brain pretty much is like, man, double my money, double, and just and just like
that's
doubling
a
down
perfect. Yep,
over and
that's a
over and
perfect
over again.
analogy.
Yeah, and I don't know, that popped in my head, man. I think Alex Hormozy talks about like the only difference between him and all his other competitors over the years is he never quit.
Yep,
And,
yep,
I think that's just so important for any entrepreneur who listens to this, anybody who's trying to build something. And to be honest, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could just be trying to work your way up the ladder as a lawyer, whatever it is. The
yep,
only thing between you and where you're trying to get to at the end of the day is like quitting. So it's like
yep,
if you commit to the path and like this is what you want to do and you're willing to go through all the pain and the suffering and the sacrifices and the blessings and the good times and when the money's
yep,
good and when money's bad, if you're like committed to the whole process and you just know that you're not going to quit, then you can be pretty confident that you're going to win eventually. You just have to be
yep,
so sure of that, and that's going to be what brings you your peace because you can be stressed out and everything, but at the end of like a 18-hour day or 6 18-hour days and you're struggling and you're losing money, if in the back of your head is like, hey, I might lose this money, my angel investor might cuss me out, my other investors might pull out, but I'm still not going to quit. I'm just going to try to figure out another way. Then it's a little bit
yep,
more like a little bit more. It can calm the system a little bit, give you a little bit more
yep.
faith in self because you're like, hey, I don't care how people react to me. I'm going to react in like doubling down and going harder and continuing to go. So I love that. On the
100%,
flips, on
100%.
that on the flip side, so that was like somewhat of your rant and slash, things people should know. What would be your rave? Like now that, of course, you're a young guy still, probably 31,
Hmm.
32. You probably have another 50 years of building businesses, or
Yep,
more, but probably 50.
yep.
You got another like 50 years of building business. So, it's not to say that you're done with the path, but you've maybe gone over one hump, right? You might have had
Mhm.
a huge, like downfall of humps of like things struggling for 5 6 years trying to build king fit and make different products and ask work, but as you come up on the other like rise of some things that have gone well, what are some of the
Mhm.
positives or some of the things that have brought you joy over the years that you're like, hey, if you're willing to go through the hards, here are some of the cool things you'll get to
Yeah.
experience. What would you say?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. There's nothing more fulfilling than the journey and getting to those landmarks of I guess what you might call success, right? So the first time you close that deal, the first time you see your product in the wild and people are benefiting from it, the first time. So now today with Milton, I'll see a coach post a client's results. Hey, Sarah just lost 25 pounds. And then he'll say, she used Milton and we did this. And I'll just see that she used Milton. I'll be like, man, that is extremely fulfilling. Something you've created, making an impact on somebody's life. It's unbelievable. the best thing out of all of this is the what I would call time flexibility and autonomy. So the freedom to choose what you do on a daily basis, that is something that is hard to put into words. I am a terrible employee. When I've got to show up to a job at 9 a.m. and stay till 5 and do what somebody's told me to do, like I'm so bad at it. And a lot of people, that's what they've just been ingrained in. So they don't know anything else. As soon as you get a taste of that freedom and flexibility, that is something that is so worth it. And now I've got two young daughters. So I've got a soon to be 4-year-old, two girls. One's about to be 4, and the other just turned 2. So they're both really young. And I get to spend so much time with them. I get to wake up with them. I get to go to bed with them. I get to come home for lunch and nap times and all this stuff because of this time flexibility. I get to make my own schedule. I get to work in a way that is aligned with me. And if you're doing work that you truly are passionate about, that's making a positive impact on people's lives, then that in and of itself is very fulfilling. It gives you this energy and motivation and happiness that is hard to get otherwise. So there are amazing rewards on it. And then of course you've got unlimited earning potential, right? You can make as much money or as little as you want. You can hit a baseline where you're like, you know what? I don't need to be Elon Musk, but a couple $100,000 a year and I'll be able to do these things. And now I've got a clear path on how to get there. Those are the types of things that are extremely fulfilling and can keep you going and keep a smile on your face and keep your energy up a lot. And then there's what I would call like the frosting on the cake, which is the little experiences. So whether it's a digital for me, whether it's a digital health conference that's in San Francisco and they've got a live band playing and you got your own badge and your own table and you get to do the photo shoots, like that stuff is fun as well. Don't get me wrong, I love a good healthcare tech startup party and event. That's very fun. Or the opportunities to meet people like yourself and do podcasts or get featured in an article. Like obviously that stuff is still, it feeds the ego and it is fun. But the most fulfilling thing is that autonomy. That autonomy is so it's intangible really. And if you can work through the all the constraints of the system, I don't want to get into my conspiracy mindset here, but all the things going against you to keep you into this straight line path, the safe path of being like everybody else. You break out of that and you start to see this new world, which is, you know what, maybe I can control my own destiny a little bit. Maybe I can decide what my day looks like and how I'm going to be with my family and the time we're going to spend and the things we're going to do and how I'm going to make an impact on people's lives. That in and of itself is extremely fulfilling. I haven't found anything else that's quite like it.
I love it. I love it. Let's dive into the product a little bit more. So, or products that you've created a little bit more. So, I
Mhm.
know there is a history of different apps you've created that have had some positive outcomes, some that didn't work so well. Some I know Milton AI right now is the project that you're continuing to build upon. But talk to me a little bit about some of the other things Momentum has or is doing, as well as some of the things and experiences that you really enjoyed, and you're like, hey, we were really able to service this population of people with King Fit. So
Yeah.
yeah, just over the years, talk a little bit about some of the products you've launched, what their goal was. Was it to help with diabetes or with heart health or with this or with that, and some of the communities you've been able to, give back to, collaborate with. Kind of, yeah, just
Yeah.
want to generally hear more about what your products have, you know, done for the community. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So I mentioned that 10 years ago, I tried to build an AI coach and the technology wasn't ready. And it's funny because now that's come full circle. ChatGPT, OpenAI have taken over the world, and now the technology is ready. And so we have now built an AI coaching platform. But in between, there's been multiple products. So when the AI coaching technology didn't work out 10 years ago, I immediately went into what's known as diabetes education. So in the healthcare space, healthcare is so big, it's unbelievable. And
massive.
there's so many like niches within it. And diabetes is one niche. And just diabetes alone is like a $400 billion market. And so within diabetes, so there's healthcare, which is multi-trillion dollar. Then there's diabetes, and then all these other things as well. But I was focused on diabetes. And even within diabetes, there's all these things from devices to medications to
Yeah,
care to
subcategories.
all
Yeah.
these things. Yeah, subcategories. And one of those subcategories is known as diabetes education. And it's this service that's provided from usually like a hospital system or a clinic where when somebody is diagnosed with diabetes, they go through a diabetes education course. And those courses have been proven to reduce the risk of complications for that person. So if that person goes through the course, it's less likely that they'll end up being admitted to the hospital, whatever, months later. And that's really important to a healthcare system because a hospital visit is very expensive. And so if I get diagnosed with diabetes and I don't manage it well, and then I have to go to the hospital for it, it's going to cost everybody a bunch of money. And so our system is now realizing things like that. And so they are incentivized to help keep people out of that hospital. So if they can roll out an app or a program that catches somebody when they're diagnosed and gives them what they need so that they avoid that hospital trip down the line, then that's a huge win. And if you take it even further, if that person who is diagnosed with diabetes doesn't get education, ends up in the hospital in year one, goes back to the hospital year two, and then has kidney disease by year three, now they're really, really expensive. Now insurance is paying tens of thousands of dollars for that one person, which is how our healthcare system's gotten so dang expensive. And so seeing that, that's when I thought, okay, we can provide an app that will deliver the diabetes education that these people need when they're newly diagnosed. And we partnered with a bunch of what are known as certified diabetes care and education specialists. The name is terrible. Don't ask me why. But they're pretty much a diabetes specialist, a diabetes coach mixed with like a diabetes nurse. And they have both the healthcare side and the fitness, health, and wellness side. And we worked with them. We took their content and we turned it into bite-sized videos and delivered it through our mobile app. And then we licensed that to different organizations and they would distribute it to their patient populations. When we did that, we got really good at making diabetes education content. And so we started standing up communities like Facebook groups. And our largest community had, I think, 60,000 people with diabetes all over the world. And we had a Spanish one and an English one. And we were distributing content, we were running challenges, and we were engaging people. And through that experience, I realized we had gotten really good at two things. One was building these communities of people with diabetes around content, and the other was engaging them with simple interactions like text message. And so then again, even in the KingFit days, this is probably 2019, 2020, I tried again to build another AI coach based on these two things that we had gotten really good at. Technology wasn't ready yet. And that's when we decided, you know what, let's wrap up. Let's wrap up this KingFit project. It's the time's not right for it. We moved right into Moment. My main angel investor came with me, backed us in the Moment project. And lo and behold, a year later, ChatGPT hits the scene. I'm laying in bed next to my wife, like, you're not going to believe this. I have been waiting for this since college. It's finally here, and we started building Milton. So there were a couple other small projects that were aligned around content or engagement throughout that time. But it was really still all about engaging people with diabetes, using technology, educating them, and then helping them track the important things like their glucose level, like their meals, like their movement, and then creating some sort of report, whether that was back to them or to their coach or provider. That has been the gist of all of this up to this point. And we've now carried that expertise into building Milton.
I love it. And so right now with thank you, by the way. I don't I wanted to get a good background understanding of what happened in those in between years before we just jumped right into Milton.
Mhm.
So that was very helpful. With Milton, how does I guess, who are your direct customers? Is it only coaches? Is it still, healthcare institutions, whether it might be hospitals or centers of learning or whatever it might be? So maybe start there. I just have a few questions about Milton to kind of help the
Yeah.
audience understand who the customer is, how they can benefit from the product, and some of the highlights of what you do there. So,
Yeah, for
who's the
sure.
customer?
So we have, I would say, really we separate our business into four customer segments. So we have coaches, and these coaches expand across fitness and healthcare. So whether you're a diabetes specialist, you're a weight loss doctor, you're a personal trainer, these are from a business standpoint, these are all coaches. And coaches is like our bread and butter because we can reach them. They're already using technologies like Everfit or Trainerize or Practice Better, any of these. And we can easily communicate the value prop, which is we are helping you incorporate AI into your coaching systems. And we're doing that with a mobile app that's white labeled. So a coach gets a white labeled mobile app that is like ChatGPT, except for health. So tracking your meals, tracking your exercise, connecting to your devices in a ChatGPT-like interface. And then they get a coaching portal that also has AI embedded into it, where it's going to highlight the focus areas for the coach. Hey, Miguel's skipped 3 days logging, you might need to reach out to him. Or Sarah's on a 10-day streak, go ahead and congratulate her to keep her going. Little things like that. Now, the coaches, from their point of view, they see the value as the opportunity to stop only trading time for money. So the scale aspect. How can I generate more revenue without having to be there all the time? They love Milton for that. And then they also love it for the increase in perceived value that they're delivering. So if I've got a coaching service and I do a really good job, but I want to maybe charge more or get more clients, then having this app and this platform and this connectivity allows me to increase my perceived value. So people are willing to pay more or even just start paying with me in the to start with. So that's how we work with coaches. Really simple for them. It's think of it like the next generation of Trainerize or Everfit. That's who we're coming after. Don't tell them that. Then we've got what I would call like gyms and clinics. And so gym, obviously, multiple coaches, same type of system. Clinic, same thing. Multiple diabetes specialists or dietitians or weight loss coaches, same type of model. It's just a bigger customer. But then we've got what we call SMBs and enterprise. And this is where, for us, significant money is to be made. And these are companies who are using our technology, but they already have a business of their own that's significant. So tens of millions of dollars in revenue. They've got a bunch of employees. They provide a device or a medication or a certain type of service, and they incorporate Milton into that as well. And so for them, we do more customizations, we do more integrations. We'll get started with them. We'll charge them a significant upfront fee to really truly incorporate Milton into their business and connect it to all their different technologies and operational flows that they already have. And that is a breadwinner for us right now. And those are usually weight loss companies, diabetes companies, and now some enterprise fitness companies as well, which are gym chains, equipment providers, and even some other applications who just want to plug Milton right into their existing app. So yeah, those are our main customer segments. And we love working with all of them. I love the coaches the most just because of the type of people and who they are and their passion and the relationships we've been able to build with them. That's been very fun.
I love that. I love that. One thing that popped into my mind there is like, what is what do the conversations look like with you and your brother when it comes to Milton? Some of the products you've built, some of the focuses you have, and the health and fitness community, and then him being on the sports performance side, being that he has to perform well to compete well. Are there conversations in this genre, like at family dinners and stuff like that, or is it not really? It's like, yeah, we don't. That's all work. We don't want to talk about work. And so it's not. But I was just thinking about that in my head. I was like, is there any use case, for the coaches that coach him to utilize
Mhm.
that software that you're building, or is there any things when you guys are sitting grabbing dinner together and you're like, hey, like, if you use this, I feel like it could help you with this, type shit. But I just
Yep,
wanted to ask
yep.
that
Great
question.
question. Yeah. We have actually, especially now, so this is our truly like our second iteration of Milton. So we released the first version literally a year ago. And the first version was very much obviously us getting the bugs out, making it better, trying to improve it, make it a real product. Now the second version is out and it's significantly better. And so I have started talking to my brother quite a bit about how might you use this? How could it help you cut weight? Because he's got to cut weight for every fight. He's got to be he's got to be on point, right? Like he
Mhm.
can't be off at all, or else he's going to show up and not make weight, which is a bad look in the UFC. So we have started talking about it. I would say Milton today, right now, is not quite ready for him to use it and cut weight and be on point 100%. It is very close and it will be by the end of this year. But the first use case for Milton is really just that accountability and overall view of what's happening with the client. So it works very well for our coaches who are getting somebody started and they have maybe 50 pounds to lose and they've never tracked their meals in their life. And just by getting a general understanding of what they're eating and what they're doing, they're going to make progress, right? For my brother, who's like, I can't even be off by a gram, or else I'm going to show up 2 ounces over. It's not at that level yet, but we will be getting there, and then he will be one of our first sponsored athletes. And we do plan to break into the sports performance world as well. And if we can take over the UFC athlete market, then that would just be so much fun.
Hell yeah. I love that. I love that. On the topic of some of the, I guess you could call them competitors, Trainer Eyes, Everfit, things of that nature. Um, and you might answer with one of those companies, but who do you think over the past few years, let's just say, past 5 years post pandemic, has been doing what Milton does at a different level, maybe less or more, really well? Like, who's somebody that's been killing it in that market that you're like looking at them and, testing their products and being like, okay, this is where we can, this is where we can interrupt, this is where we can
Yeah.
interrupt the market. Who are some companies where you're like, man, I love what they do. I just think we could do this part a little bit better.
Yep. Yep. Great question. So, what's funny is there's the healthcare market and the fitness market, and a lot of people separate them. But really, when it comes to these coach softwares, they're on both sides, both healthcare and fitness, and they're really the same. One just says HIPAA compliant healthcare, and the other says fitness, but they really do the same thing. Now, Everfit, of course, I'm a huge fan of Everfit. They've done a great job with what I would call the last generation of technology. And so, especially since the pandemic, they've been on a rise. Everything they do is very well done. I am a fan of Everfit. I want to make that clear. On the healthcare side, there's a company called Practice Better that is very similar. It's just the healthcare version. Both of these companies do an amazing job at their branding, at their marketing, at their with their products. They're just built for the last generation. They weren't built in the new era of AI. And I think the difference that I've noticed that we're going to see a lot more of moving forward is traditional technology allows me to get in and manage my stuff better and maybe automate a few things, but it doesn't truly expand me and it doesn't save me a ton of time. And actually, I've watched some of our coaches use some of these platforms like True Coach or Coach Catalyst or any of them, and it actually takes them more time to do the job. But it is a software that helps them manage better. What we're going to see and what Milton is positioned to do is AI software is going to feel much more like having an employee than having a software. It's going to do tasks on your behalf while you're asleep, while you're away, and then come back and report to you and feel like you've hired a VA or intern or coach on your staff to do the grunt work, I call it, the intern level work. I don't believe AI is ready to replace a coach. I don't think it ever will. I think it's an amazing assistant, and the coach human relationship is extremely important for many reasons, accountability and motivation and lots of things. But where our technology is positioned is I've dug so deep into all these platforms, but if I set up a coach to say, okay, go into Trainerize and build out a program for this client, their exercise program, the nutrition program, make it custom for them, send them messages, set up a follow-up schedule. It's going to take them 30 minutes to do all of that. And with a technology like Milton, it's going to take them 2 minutes. They're going to get it done automatically, and then they're going to approve it. And then Milton's going to go and deliver it on their behalf and report back to them about what's going on. And that's the big difference now. I'm guessing, my guess is that Everfit and Trainerize and all these platforms are currently working on AI technologies. Everybody sees it. All the companies in the software game are starting to adopt AI more and more. But I would say we're the first truly AI native platform that starts with AI at its core, with this shift in mindset that AI technology is going to feel like an employee, not a software. Again, I'm a huge fan of Everfit, huge fan of Practice Better on both sides. They've done an amazing job. They're just built with the last generation of tech, and now there's all new capabilities now that the AI stuff is here.
I love it. I love it. Man, you know what I didn't even ask you at the beginning of the conversation? Is it Miguel Johns or Johns? Johns? or is it Miguel? Like, give me the proper pronunciation so that I can so that I can go to my next statement feeling confident about how I
Yeah.
said your name.
Yeah. So, of course, growing up in Newton, Kansas, which I was the only black kid in my class, everybody just called me Miguel, like just as Americanized as you can say it. My grandmother calls me Miguel, like with a Mexican accent. So it is Miguel Johns. Mexican. My mom's side is Mexican. My dad's side's black. But yeah, Miguel, either one, I'm cool with whatever.
Perfect. Well, Miguel Johns, thank you so much for joining us on the Voices of Value podcast today. You've given us some pretty good insight into what you've worked on in the past, some of the experiences you've gone through, some of the learning insights you've garnered, and where you're headed now with Milton AI, and some of the value propositions that you could offer for coaches, healthcare institutions, companies alike. I'm excited to see you continuing to grow. I've been watching you on Instagram the past year or so, and wanted to make sure we had you on the show to chat a little bit about what you're working on, and have you on in a few months again when there's some new information out there about, like, yeah, this is what we're doing now, and this is a new iteration. I want to share it with the world and some of the things we've gone through and learned during this time period. But I'm happy you agreed to come on today. Before we hop off today, one of the old questions that I used to use as my final question that I haven't used in a while is, if it was your last day on Earth, meaning like your very last day on Earth,
Mhm.
and all the books and podcasts and articles that have been written about the businesses you've built and your experience and your story are gone. They're taken away, and you're sitting in front of a group of children, like the next generation, and they are like, "Hey, Uncle Miguel, give us one piece of advice on how to live a good life." What would you say?
Man, that is a great question. Um, I think I would say I would probably try to, as best I could, convince them on how magnificent it is to be a human being. And I think that is something that has been absolutely lost in just our culture and how we raise people and how we talk to each other. You are a walking miracle. The odds of you existing are pretty much zero. Your heart beats itself, your eyes see for you, your lungs breathe when you don't even have to think about it. You grow yourself. I'm watching my daughters and I'm like, this is literally magic. And we walk around and act like it's normal. And so I would say, just remember that. Remember what you actually are, which is a human being. It took who knows how long for us to get to the stage that we are today, and where we can talk to each other on a camera and communicate. And that is nothing short of the most magnificent magic that's ever been displayed in anywhere. And so that is the one thing. If you can truly grasp that, then everything else in life, I think, will come to you and you'll be able to do whatever you want. But so many people walk around with these self limitations. I'm just me. And not only am I just me, I'm the worst at this. I'm bad at this. I suck at this. I did this wrong. Like that's how we're spending our time. I would say just flip that, please. Please realize what you are and who you are. And if you can do that, then I can die a happy man.
I love it. Flip the switch, ladies and gentlemen. An attitude of gratitude is the way to go.
Yes,
That was our
sir.
guest, Miguel Johns. Make sure you guys follow him on Instagram. Go ahead and share your website, your ads. Send us the links after this episode's over so we
Yes,
can
sir.
plug the audience with everything they need to stay up to date on what you're doing. And then we'll wrap it up. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram, Miguel Johns. You come across my profile there. That's where I am most active. I'm on LinkedIn as well. If you're more on the business side of things, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. But if you're looking to learn more about Milton, www.getmilton.com. That is our website. Yep, those are my main places I hang out.